Welcome to another garden vlog. Right now we're looking at the aftermath of those freezes. This little seedling orange tree, which is not little, it's probably 9-10 foot in the air. Definitely showing some major suffering. You know, several 2 or 3 days or nights and mornings, I should say, in 27 degrees Fahrenheit. 1 or 2 in that 33, 34 range, 32. And one night they hit around 23 degrees, although a few people in this area claimed 21 degrees Fahrenheit, which who knows what it is. I don't have thermometers, but I really would love to have something set up to have microclimates, individual areas get temperatures all night long to see what do we have any microclimates, first, and what the temperature differences would be on a, 21, 23, 25 degree night. Another seedling citrus of some sort or two here, mostly unfazed. They're still kind of upright, even though there's some yellowing there. And another one here that just 4 or 5 foot from that one. That looks horrible. Then about 18 inches, 20 inches away, you got one here that looks fine. And then we'll go back here another couple feet, and this guy here, which we've pruned, I think, or tried to graft a few times over the years and was unsuccessful. So this guy has a pretty nice caliper of, trunk, but it got some major damage at the top there, and even most of the bottom leaves, except the very bottom, look bad. That looks pretty good at about 10, 12 inches above the trunk, but these 15, 16 inches, the higher up you go, the worse it gets. This massive longevity spinach didn't fare too well, but hopefully in the root system there'll be something alive that will come back next year. And here's one of our pineapples. We just put pine needles and stuff around, but it looks pretty bad. Hopefully its core, its heart, or whatever will survive and come out of it, but who knows. Some of these lilies or whatever they are, Easter lilies, or I don't know exactly what they are, that are loving the cold weather, that's making them come out and fly. Lightly covered this Jabota that looks like a Sabara, I think. It's probably going to be okay. I mean, it doesn't look great, but we'll uncover it a little bit, let it allow some sunshine to come through. Another one. Doesn't look terrible. We should have another one right here. It's kind of on the south wall. Doesn't look bad at all. Lycopody is looking, I don't know if that's brown or yellow there. So who knows what that's gonna do. That trunk is definitely a little bit brown, but it looks kind of normal on the bottom, so maybe it'll die off the tip or something and come back, but we're not over with winter yet. This here is that mountain or cherry guava. And they say it's pretty cold hardy. And it's basically a giant version of like a strawberry cattleya guava. And my cattleya guavas do not look good, especially the lemon guava. I mean, it's hard to tell if it's going to bounce back or if it's dead or dying. But this guy looks fine. Now, this Jabota does not look good at all, very brown. Is it going to survive? Who knows? Definitely a lot of damage, leaf damage on all the cocktail grapefruits. That was one. Here's another one. And the strongest one here, major leaf damage at least. This is my tropical pink guava. I do not think it's going to make it unless it comes back from the roots or maybe low in the ground. I mean, it could. Look at that. That first 27 or whatever degree frost we got, it looked like it was dying, but then we got a rain and it just perked up. But this does not look like it's going to perk up. It's going to most likely have to shoot new shoots out from somewhere along that trunk, between the trunk and the roots. But yeah, it does not look good. This is another Jabota. It also doesn't look that great. Doesn't look terrible, but it's definitely got some browning of the leaves. There's another one here. Definitely some browning. Now we're at like, see, there's my fence line. This is my backmost property that's the wettest. So I figured all the shade and all the wet, soil would help protect it, but maybe not. About 10 or 15 feet further, there's a nice green jaboticaba right there. Now here, even in more shade, this guy's like really looking bad. Another jaboticaba. Just a little bit more in the sunlight there. We got one here that doesn't look too bad at all. It's definitely faded, but the leaves are still green. Everything is perky looking. This is that avocado that I put here, the third one I put in the same spot, last season. And it seems fine. The other two died pretty fast here. I think there was one like right about over here, like 2 foot away from it. Maybe another one over there somewhere. Third time, I guess, is the charm here. There's one not looking too great by a white sapote that is pretty. Has some nice brown leaves, almost crispy, but not quite. All right, this guy here looks good. That could be a sabar. I don't know for sure though by looking at the really small seedlings. This one here is a tiny little tender guy, and it still looks okay. So I guess looking at every other jaboticaba looking better, worse, better, worse, better, worse, has me questioning, can 5-10 foot apart be a different microclimate? Can you freeze to death right here and 10 foot away have minimum or no damage on your leaves and just in general? But also the other question is whether or not individual plants, even on the same, if it's all sabar, all red hybrids, whatever, can individual plants have different cold tolerance? And I've read that is the case a lot of times, that some nurseries will let nature pick out the weakest ones, the least cold hardy, and then they will use those other ones for grafting or for selling or whatever they do with them. It looks like the Meyer lemon did take a little bit of damage in certain areas, but not terribly. And it looks like most of my big citrus trees have, if they have damage, it's probably on just new tip growth. And unfortunately, a lot of plants, a lot of citrus and other plants were already in that spring growth mode. It started warming up after those 1 or 2 27-degree Fahrenheit days or nights, and shooting new tips, new leaves. Some of the mulberries were trying to produce little fruits, and all of them got zapped. This cherry of Rio Grande here is not looking happy at all. That's oak there. But it hasn't really looked good in the last 6 months, 8 months anyway. And here's that yellow catley guava. Very few leaves are on it left. All of them look really bad. So this tree just may not recover. Here's a red catley guava. Also looks pretty awful. All the leaves look terrible. Another strawberry catley guava. Hard to tell at this point. And this guy here, kind of way in the shade. Don't look that great, but the bottom leaves don't look as bad as the top leaves do, where it's more exposed to wind and stuff. And this is our black Suriname cherry. All the leaves look bad. Did not really protect it at all this year. And this Joey avocado is not looking very good right now. This jujube seedling looks pretty much toast too, but pretty much any bad freezes or frost we have just wipes it pretty good. It's even had those borer beetles last year, and it killed it to the ground, but it came back up with a vengeance. So hopefully it'll keep coming back up. Eventually it may be able to produce ripe fruit again, but it's been so cold, tender, sensitive, that it just doesn't show a lot of promise. And it also flowers usually at a different time than the grafted jujubes. I was checking on this pigeon poop compost, both of them, and they're kind of dried out. They're very fluffy, airy, and dried out. So I did spray it a little bit with water hose yesterday or the day before. And I think I'm going to move it out in the open because we're supposed to get a little bit of rain today around 4 p.m. So we need to get it a little bit more moisture. It's probably just not going to allow earthworms and stuff to stay in there if it's so dry. All right, we got it out here where there's no roof over it. Kind of a dreary day, no sunlight yet. And hopefully we get some rain on these guys. Just found one of the Jabota combos we forgot to cover. It looks a little bit toasty there. That's a red hybrid. Not a super small one either. Been sort of trading this Jujube Island area here that we've kind of, made up with, trees and stuff here. Similarly to the pineapple guava area, we don't really have a massive amount of mulch or anything to just do one, drop of something here and fill it in and try to get rid of some of the weeds and, maybe allow for some of the roots to come up. The roots to come up a little bit, maybe to grow upwards like we've been trying to do with some of the other kind of like post-mycorrhizal beds that we've put around trees and stuff over the last year or so. So it's just something where we throw some sticks in here, throw some this in there. So there's a piece of a banana leaf there I just threw in there, and some other like maple that have fallen to the ground recently. Although we have gotten fruit from our seedling that is really cold sensitive. Not a lot of fruit. Most of the time, even when they fruit, they do not get to maturity before they freeze. And this, whatever this is, I don't even know if this is the right tag, Chico or whatever, Jujube. We only had fruit on it last year because we air layered it. And the air layer failed, but that scarification or whatever it's called on the actual tree, I think forced it to fruit. And I don't know if they got half size or what, but then they dropped off way before they got mature. Over the years, we've planted many like grafted jujubes, and all of them slowly died away. And this one doesn't have the size or anything that you would expect for, a 15 or 20 year old tree, but it somehow has lingered on. So this is our last ditch effort to see if we can, get all these nutrients and all this, hopefully it'll do some weed prevention and all, so there's less competition in the root system. And I don't know, because these guys are not supposed to really like wet feet. This is kind of an in-between area here where it does stay wet quite a bit. The seedling seems to do just fine there, except being zapped by the cold every time we get a cold spell. We may try to air layer it again once it gets in the growth mode, maybe do one or two more attempts, or we may not. It's hard to tell what we're going to do, but I would definitely like more material to experiment with higher places that aren't so wet. And I did plant some in a super high zone, but it was probably too sandy, too high, not enough moisture, I'm assuming, to keep it happy. So it probably, there are extremes on both ends. Now this is a part of the property where I really haven't grown much. I got the hidden ginger or whatever it's called there. But on that corner fence right there, there's like a hill that comes up. And I was thinking just yesterday or the day before, it dips down right around here on this river birch tree. But that hill there might be a good place to put something. I definitely think a citrus would be good there, but I wonder what else would be good here. It can't be something that gets more than like 15 or 20 feet because we have electric line there. A citrus or some type of shrub might do well there. Maybe even a tea plant. This is my pomelo, white pomelo or whatever, but it definitely got some zapped leaves on the top there. Probably all the last 4 or 6 months growth or more. Got hit pretty hard with that frost or freeze. These leaves down here are more stiff and they look okay, but they got some yellowing there. I don't know if it's citrus greening or lack of iron, magnesium, something else. May need to give it some kind of minerals and see if we can snap it out of this. Well, it's been another maybe couple of days since I filmed in this video. Kind of bummed out because those 2 days of like frost, 31-degree frost, have now turned into 8 days or so of frosts and freezes coming this way. I shouldn't complain too much because a lot of states in the north and northwest and west of us looks like are potentially going to get it way worse, and they've probably already started getting some of it worse than us. I think Natalie's sister, which recently moved to like Fort Worth area in Texas, they're telling her that they're not even going to be able to go outside, I believe, at least for, maybe a couple days or more. But what I'm most bummed about, there's a couple of things to be bummed about, but what I'm most bummed about is that, these grafts that I put on the outdoor plants, the mulberry grafts and stuff, they could potentially just freeze, dry, and you just not have a chance of making it. So we're crossing our fingers here, and it could be an almost total loss, if not a total loss. And I guess having to cover these first year in the ground jaboticabas and stuff, and already seeing how bad our cat leg guavas and cherry of Rio Grande have handled the first, I guess, series of pretty hard freezes. When we hit about 23 degrees, this could be the nail in the coffin for several plants. I hope that we have, the strongest survive, and we have some strong everything, jaboticabas, bars, red hybrids, Cattleya guavas, and that cherry of Rio Grande, which we only have one of them. Hopefully they somehow pull through. I guess I should say the white sapotes. I'm pretty sure some of the white sapotes aren't going to make it, or possibly got, zapped in those 23 to 27 degree frosts. But I hope that one or multiples will survive. And, again, is there, each one genetically different, can some survive and some not. And I hope that we get enough to survive to really see how they do long term here. There have been a lot of experiments or times in the past where I put, things down in the ground that were questionable as far as cold tolerance. And even, the ugly tangelos or unique fruit or Jamaican tangelos, we tried twice before we started doing a vlog, and both times they succumbed to, I believe, the first winter. And I've had a lot of instances where first year in the ground, winter zaps, we didn't get the mild winters, or 1 or 2 winters to harden everything up that I wanted. But you never know. Are you going to have one of those 240 chill hour winters that's pretty mild? Or are you going to have, a 400 plus chill hour winter here in north central Florida that has some, 1, 2, or 5 or 10 days of just absolute, light or hard freezes that decimate things, especially when we had, like, after those 27 degree nights, a lot of things went to spring growth mode, and everything. That's when citrus can really get hit hard. Probably other things. As of this morning or last night when I checked the weather, we have, I think, tomorrow night supposed to be hitting somewhere between like 27 and 29 degrees Fahrenheit, and Tuesday, 25. And I got to wonder if we're going to hit another 23 degree night when that actual night comes, because we did go down to 23 when it was supposed to be like 25 or 26, and they said it could hit as low as 21. Some people hit 21, and I don't think we did, but we definitely got around 23 degrees. And that probably killed our uncovered jaboticabas that just we planted so many out there that we forgot where all of them were. And I'm pretty sure 2 of them are dead. A few of them are looking bad, so they could be just dead and we don't quite know it yet, or they could be dying. A few of them look like they got green, look green and somewhat healthy. But I kind of wonder how many, if this like 7 or 8, 9 day frosts and freezes is just gonna make anything look good by the end of it. A lot of people are saying, I'm afraid to cover my plants for, 8 days. Well, they're probably going to have to cover them at night, uncover them in the day, uncover at night, uncover in the day, probably water them, before and between every little frost, and hope for the best. So, well, it's weird. We're end of season, vlogging, trying to, see where do we end and start a new season. And things are not quite as hectic yet as they were maybe last year, when we were just constantly filming those freezes and bringing stuff in and out all the time. But the end result may be worse here, because 2 or 3 frosts and freezes might just decimate a large portion of what we're trying to grow. And if all of our jaboticabas, cattleya guavas, cherry of Rio Grande, white sapotes somehow succumb to this cold weather, are we even going to try again in the future? Without having some kind of real protection plan for each individual plant in the ground. You might be able to see all the wind we have here blowing that cold front in. It's pretty windy all day long. It's definitely getting a little dreary and dark out there. I don't know if you can see the clouds back there. Then we'll get up here where it's a little bit lighter. So there's the lighter clouds going back here into the darkness. Supposed to have some rain, but it hasn't rained yet. Over the last, yesterday and today was supposed to rain. Maybe we'll get some. I think tomorrow we're potentially supposed to have rain. Hopefully we get some. We got robins everywhere. Look at them flying around. Anyway, my problems are basically insignificant compared to everybody that is being affected and that will be affected by these storms. In every Arctic blast, blizzard, snowstorm, people lose their lives. In every hurricane, people lose their lives. Earthquakes, the heat waves out west kill a lot of people, especially seniors and homeless people. So these problems, that I'm looking at, they're a downer, but they're not significant, in the same way that life is precious. With that being said, there are probably millions of people all over the United States that are trying to protect their trees and plants and fruits and all that good stuff. They're fixing to probably get their loquat blooms just blasted off, and fruit, citrus, if they haven't already had it from that 23, 21 degree, weather. So it's not just me that's going to be losing, you know, a small thing, you know, maybe a few $100s worth of plants. You know, in the long run, this could affect, you know, part of the citrus industry and everything. And I actually have some stuff on order, some plant materials, obviously from Fruitwood Nursery, but another one. And luckily they have not shipped any of these out yet, because we're getting messages from FedEx and other couriers, you know, delivery services, saying this could and will likely affect their services, their deliveries. You know, you might send something out and it be in limbo for, you know, 2 weeks versus, you know, getting it here in 2 days. And, you know, I can't believe that. I don't know if it was my last video or the one before, or if it could have been in this video early on. I think it was last video on the vlog. I talked sort of about end goals, you know, what do we get from here? And this, you know, these Arctic blasts could potentially just strike, you know, 2, 3, 5 different things off of our list permanently, unless we want to keep, you know, pouring money into this experimentation and then hoping that we have mild enough winters for everything to harden off. Now, you'll hear that term quite a bit when you talk about avocados. You need to harden these cold hardy avocados off, these Mexican avocados, because if you don't have them hardened off before they hit too much sun, too much winter chill, that, you know, they could succumb to, you know, any number of things. You know, that is inclusive with our plantings of jaboticabas, that is inclusive with our plantings of sapote, white sapote. But our cat-lay guavas have been in the ground for a few years, not long, maybe 3 years, and they've taken some cold damage. Our cherry of Rio Grande, again, they've taken some damage. Those cat-lay guavas were producing pretty good. But I would assume, based on how fast they grow in fruit, that they're hardened off within about 2 years. So this may be a sign that unless you do a major covering or pruning and covering of them each bad, you know, Arctic blast that comes around that threatens you with 25 or below that Fahrenheit, that, you know, it may not be worth growing. Because I put them in super shade, moist conditions, which should be sort of like a microclimate and add an added protection of keeping, you know, those roots moist, even when we have that cold Arctic wind pulling out all the moisture from the plant. So it just may be that we are not south, you know, enough for those to thrive. And cherry of Rio Grande, they are such a slow grower, so slow to mature, and pretty expensive even for like a 3-inch plant, that, you know, it's not a reasonable thing to have to replace it time and time again, because we'll likely never have that 10 or 12-year-old plant if it cannot tolerate these Arctic blasts. Charlie, what do you think about this cold weather coming soon?
What does that mean? Is it going to snow?
Probably not snow, but it's going to be in the 20s.
I'm probably going to be out for a long, long time.
You're going to be indoors a lot in the warm weather, right? I bet there'll be a lot of ice that's iced up on these water barrels.
Daddy, can you see me?
Barely.
I'm gonna do this.
Well, it's another day, and it was 28 degrees this morning, Fahrenheit, and it was a cold 28. I didn't see any frost or anything on anything, but the wind, it would basically cut you in half. I don't know if you just heard that. That's not thunder. That's actually the military training. So they're doing bombs and stuff this morning. But I found 2 of my plant labels here. These aren't the right labels for what I put on this cherry plum when I did grafts earlier, you know, a couple weeks ago or so. I just wrapped the ones that were scarlet plums, and I didn't tag any of them that were the pluots. But we probably even have a couple others, pluots or something, and plums coming within the next few days to graft onto this guy. So hopefully the wind isn't so bad that it's going to mess up our tags, because these just flew off of there with those 15 or 20 mile per hour gusts all day yesterday. One tag is remaining, so we did 8 grafts, I think. You know, there's one that kind of looks decent there. This guy here does not look that great. Maybe I put too big of one on there and it's just going to dry out. Did sort of a side veneer graft there. Did several up here, so 8 in total, I think. So we were supposed to get, about 8 days of frosts and freezes, but it looks like another Arctic blast is coming right behind this current one we're getting hit by. And it's going to be somewhere in the low 20s on Saturday. I don't know if that's Friday night or Saturday night. I can't remember. I'll have to check it out. But potentially 3 or 4 nights in the 20s, high 20s too. And several nights in the low 30s. So we may end up having to get that grafting wood that's coming in soon and just put it in the refrigerator for a few weeks until it gets a little bit warmer. Well, it's another day. And look at the predictions for Saturday and Sunday. 22 degrees. I think it was predicted to be 24 just a day or two ago. Last night it was supposed to be 25. But I think it only hit like 28 for a small, brief period of time. And then it quickly went right back up to 30 degrees Fahrenheit. And it didn't hit that, but I guess we're going to make up for it, this weekend. My cat leg guavas here could be dead. No green on the scratch test, dried out like breaking. But I did put some more leaves over there, and I put a bucket of water here. That 23 degrees it hit, may have done it in, but we got somewhere between 20 and 21 degrees coming tomorrow night and maybe the next night. So this is really bad. The cherry of Rio Grande has one little green section shooting out there. Everything else looks toast. This is our lemon guava. It looked worse before the other ones did. Not really green, it's kind of brown. We do have leaves there. We have the big bucket of stink water there creating some heat. So we hope that it comes back from the base or ground. Hard to tell. Our Suriname cherry, our black one, is definitely not scratching green at the top. I didn't go back down to the base or anything. But I figured it would be just fine. But, we got colder weather coming, so I put leaves around the base of it too. This could be a lot of money's worth of death this year. Well, it is Saturday, the day of that first freeze. Our first of our next series of freezes, I should say. And we brought everything out that was in just to get it watered, let it drip dry so it doesn't get water and mud all over the floor. It allowed us to clean up the floor in there in the house before we put them back out again, or inside again, I should say. And surprise, surprise, we got 6 of these persimmon rootstocks in. And I debated whether to go in the ground with some, but I think I'm just going to put them in pots, because even if these guys grew in the ground, our luck with grafting in-ground persimmons has been bad. Had better luck controlling that sunshade, issue, and having a little bit of success with them in pots. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. So here's my new Sabara. It's supposed to be grafted. 3-gallon pot. Was shipped in an actual pot from South Florida. I didn't know if it arrived toasted or not, because it I guess because of all these Arctic storms we've had, the Postal Service has been delayed, and it got delayed in Atlanta, Georgia for a couple days. So I said, it's probably going to arrive dead or frozen. Looks pretty good so far. Now we got quite a few little cuttings here from Fruitwood Nursery for either grafting or cuttings, but you know, I should say to root and graft. However, no way we can graft in this cold weather, so we're going to put them back in the refrigerator for a few days and then take a look at it, see what we can graft, see if there's anything left over to try to root, you know, and maybe in the next video we will reveal what everything is. And here we are with the inside plants. Welcome to another garden vlog. And look at that big thing of ice here. I can't even see what the screen with the sun glare. But this was just a bucket, an Easter bucket. Had a little bit of water in it, and that's about 1.25 inches, maybe 1.5 inches. Solid ice. This citrus tree was already looking bad from that 23-degree morning. And it looks even worse now, and it'll probably continue to look worse for another week, and we'll see if it survived. It actually had some new growth coming out in certain areas just yesterday. So, who knows? There's our thornless cactus just drooping, melting almost. And our comfrey there looking sad. Now that's from a more northern climate. The cold shouldn't bother it long term. But it sure looks sad often from the heat and the cool and the drought. Now they're big, like 1.5 inches plus. Just ice. Water tub. Ice. All the philodendrons here just melted. So, last night, our Alexa device said it was going to be 19 degrees here. You know, it's hard to tell. Different weather forecasts have different, you know, readings. But every time we asked, the low temperature, the lowest it hit was 20 degrees. Again, we don't have thermometers and stuff set up out here to see what the temperature was, but it was supposed to be, I think, a 16-hour freeze. So it was already in the 20s, I think, before dark last night. That white sapote does not look good, but hopefully the trunk will survive. And the winds aren't stopped. It's already close to 1 p.m. It's still in the 30s. And instead of having 2 nights in the 20s, we're expected to have 3 nights. So even Monday night is supposed to be in the 23, 28, something like that, 25. They change all the time though, so it's hard to tell what it's going to be. 21 to like 24, 25 degrees Fahrenheit is usually the limit of jaboticabas. And our jaboticabas we have in the ground are like that, little tiny ones, except for one we have planted and covered with leaves or pine needles. But, you know, ours, like I said, are small, so that could either be an advantage because they're easier to cover with leaves, or it could be a disadvantage because they haven't hardened off. Again, we'll see, I guess, in a month or two. Probably sooner than that if they're dead. But see how they recover, or if any survive, or if any of the white sapotes survive, or if any of the avocados survive. Here are 2 of the little avocado seedlings we didn't really cover or anything with leaves or anything. But, you know, just looking at this, there's definitely some top growth death there. But just like citrus, sometimes you see the worst, you know, effect of freezes, you know, days or a week later or more. This Meyer lemon already looks pretty bad with some, you know, a lot of dried up leaves and stuff, and it doesn't have many leaves left. A few of them, you know, maybe in this under canopy area might do okay. For the most part, we didn't really protect our citrus trees at all this year. You know, I'm just said whatever's going to survive is going to survive. Now, if we hit that 19 degree temperature, that would put us back into USDA Zone 8B weather, temperatures, which is kind of what I grew up with. And I think the lowest temperature I remember hitting was 16 degrees in 1985. But, just going to school, elementary school and stuff like that, we had days where it was cold all day, like it's going to be today. We had a lot of this weather and even worse weather. However, in the last, 15 or 20 years, you have freezes or frosts every year, a few of them. And for the most part, no super extended cold days, like for a week or 2 weeks at a time. Although last year we had over, I think, 500 chill hours here, where we get the average of like 312, 315 or so on most years. And I think this could be a good learning lesson, especially if we start doing more grafts or potentially go into, small commercial settings where we're selling and trading, a high volume of grafted plants, and that lesson is that we may need a greenhouse to do these grafts. And the reason why isn't because there isn't warmer weather later. That would be ideal. You get that bud growth when it's not, of course, this year we had that spring growth on a lot of things way before it was spring, knowing that there was going to be 3 or 4 frosts or freezes afterwards, maybe more than that. But when it's in the right time of the year, when the threat is mostly over of those frosts, that's when we could graft a lot of things. However, the suppliers in, mostly northern states are sending out stuff or selling out before, we would be able to graft outside during the ideal conditions. So they say grafting takes, best when you obviously have that spring budding out and leafing out, which hasn't happened yet. But since that's not a possibility, because of the lack of materials, in 2 or 3 months from now, that you would need to put plants in pots and put them in a greenhouse, and you need those ideal daytime temperatures to be between 70 and 80 degrees so that your grafts can take. I kind of expect a high number of plant material losses. I kind of expect a high level of plants in the ground, losing a lot of them. Hopefully our citrus, or most of them, survives and does okay. But these subtropicals like jaboticabas, it's, and white sapote, I have no idea. This is new territory for me. So these are the cuttings from last video that we received, but we had to put them in the refrigerator. And we've kind of survived all these little frosts and freezes, although with space heaters, we sort of froze, especially any time we weren't under, the blankets. So we have 2 or 3 space heaters. We're using 2 of them, one for master bedroom and one for the living room area, which is very open. Did not work very well for that area, but it worked okay until it hit maybe 21 degrees, 20 degrees. So there we are. These 2 are Excelsior Plum, which we're going to try for a second time, and Dapple Dandy Pluot. And here we have 2 medlars. They gave me an awful large one right there, so see if I can find something to put on there. Maybe a large loquat, and that smaller one maybe we can put on mayhaw or something. Persimmons, 1 Garrison American persimmon, another Triac coffee cake, and Bruniquil, if that's the right pronunciation. Here's all Chinese hawthorn, a variety here of mulberries. Sorry, I had a brain fart there. On this loquat here, we did 2 side veneer grafts. This was Delise something medlar, which that's not what I picked. They supplemented it or substituted it. And Monstros something not even going to try to pronounce the words. So little one here, little one there, and now we got more materials to put down. We got a small loquat here. I would have double grafted it, but that monstrous or whatever is way too small to easily graft onto this bigger portion here. Wasn't quite as big as this Delise Deval or whatever it's called, but we did another little really low side veneer graft here. Not the greatest graft. I couldn't really, this guy was growing crooked, so it was only like a straight up and down vertical growth right here on the near the bottom, about maybe 1.5 to 2 inches from the root line, I mean the soil line. Sorry, I got kids driving me crazy as I'm trying to do this. And another one, this is probably my last good decent sized one, loquat, that I put another Delise, whatever it's called, on it. And we did a whip and tongue. The rootstock was awful soft, so it's hard, that flap was a little loose, but we tried to do it the best we could, and hopefully there's a cambium layer contact in at least one place, if not 2 or 3. It's Persian mulberry, and you pretty much have to graft these guys, and I've been trying to utilize this grafting rubber bands and stuff, or rubber strips, see if it holds that cambium layer into better contact, as you know, something might cause it to expand and contract and stuff. So we'll see. The Morris nigras, you pretty much have to graft. They don't take easily from cuttings. They will pretend that they're rooted, you know, bringing like budding out, leafing out sometimes, and you know, grow a few inches, you know, when you're like, oh, they must be rooted, and then they'll shrivel up and die, and then you dig them up and there's no roots at all. I got a little black beauty here. There was like 2 limbs, or I could have just cut it down there. It would have been more appropriate size. So it's a little bit of a mix match on, you know, one side or the other. So not a great graft, but again, Morris nigra has to be grafted. This is a mulberry that I tried to multi-graft a month or 2 back. So it's got several of them that still have green buds on them. Not sure about that little side graft there, but we put a Pakistan here with a super long side veneer graft here, just because it's like 4 or 5 inches apart from the buds, so not a lot of buds on the scion wood. Pakistan will survive on its own roots or root, but it doesn't have nematode resistance, so you really have to graft them in Florida. This tree has boysenberry, Grover's Best, Pakistan, Black Beauty, and Wakisa. Look how far apart the buds are on this Italian too. That's like 5 inches, 4 inches, one there, one there. So you got only 4 buds on this big stick. We're trying to do an Italian here. We tried it last year and it failed. So we're just going to do one on this guy, I think. So just have the little push-in tag. Well, we ran out of daylight, so I finished one up and did one more inside. This is a Garrettson American Persimmon. Right? Is it a Garrettson?
No.
It's another day, and we're going to try to continue on. This is another American Persimmon rootstock. We're going to see what we can put on. We only got cambium contact potentially on one side, because when I cut it higher, I could not get a good whip and tongue, so you got one side here that making very little or no cambium contact. But we're going to hope that one side is good enough, and definitely wrap it with a rubber grafting strip. That's as good as we can do. Another Garrettson American Persimmon here. I did a pretty good one with the coffee cake. The scion wood was a little smaller. Cut it just a hair too short here. You know, even though I would prefer to probably do a low graft, we could potentially maybe do a side graft as well there somewhere. All right, this is the last of our coffee cake, and we put it on an American Persimmon that was in the ground. We've had a lot of failures here with these guys. We've tried 4, 5, 6 times on these guys, going up and down. Probably cleft graft, whip and tongue graft, side veneer graft. It's even got a sucker over here, so if something happens to this guy, that sucker, that might be a sucker too, or it could be a red maple, not sure. So we have backups here in case this guy fails. I just changed my mind and just did a cleft graft here on this Garrettson. I probably could have did 2 grafts attempts, but hey, we're just gonna do it like this. And there's like 3 buds. There ain't no buds up here, I don't think. Oh, maybe there is right there. So 1, 2, 3, at least 3 buds there. Maybe it's been another day or 2 since I did any filming. And we got another, I don't know if it actually got to freezing temperatures. Maybe it did. Or maybe it didn't last long enough to do any major ice. But sometime yesterday morning or so, we got a freeze watch for last night and this morning. So it was supposed to be around 32. It hit 30, I believe. Now, I think on Saturday night, Sunday morning, between 3 and 8 a.m., we're under another freeze watch. Not a freeze warning, but the temperature can change at any time, and it can just go 2 or 3 degrees lower or higher than they predicted. So at this point, it's saying 35, so it could be 32, or they might change it. It might go to 28 or 27 or 40. Who knows? But I think yesterday, maybe the day before, we did some grafts off camera. And what I was doing on my cherry plum rootstock, which I got a myriad of grafts. I originally put scarlet in that other pluot on it. That I forget what cultivar that is. So I marked all the scarlet ones just with a tag, even though I didn't put a name on them. And every one of them blew off. So now I got Excelsior Plum and Dapple Dandy Pluot attempting grafts too, and I didn't even tag anything. So we'll see if over time something actually takes, or hopefully all of them at least get one, but you never know. But if all of them take, I'm sure within a few years we should know which is which. So I don't think I filmed any of this, but this is another, like a side veneer graft for a Chinese hawthorn, parasol star, something like that, cultivar, where I tried to do that red sun last year that failed, and it's still attached to this mayhaw. It's just, there's no life in it. So we're trying again. And we did, we did 2 types of medlars, the same ones we did on the loquats and stuff. So we did the Chinese hawthorn and then the 2 medlars on 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, basically 6 grafts all on mayhaw rootstock. And as you can see with these Arctic blasts, we still got major wind. And supposedly in Archer, Florida, on some parts of like southwest Gainesville, and even somebody in southwest Gainesville said they hit 15 degrees when we had like that 21 degree freeze here. Archer, they claimed 17. Somebody in like historic downtown, I think near what they call Duck Pond area, Gainesville, they hit 17 there, supposedly. The nurseryman or whatever in Archer, I think he said even things that he had in little greenhouse hoop houses and stuff, it killed a lot of things. Even with that, just wasn't enough protection for that 17 degree, followed by like a 21 and 23-ish degree night. Looking at some of the little Jaboticabas, looks like the ones that are smallest and lowest to the ground have almost no damage. Ones that are 5, 4, 7 inches tall had potentially major damage or even death. This one's a Sabar. It actually looks like it didn't have hardly any damage at all. Had it covered with a lot of pine needles here. This little guy here wasn't even much to begin with, but it does have some green leaves on it. Another day, and we got 3 more 5-gallon buckets of pigeon poop, although that's probably 4, and maybe 3.5 there. And these are the original 2 that we already did that we're composting down. Although these guys have been drying out a lot. We've had to wet them, and we've had to put them away from the roof here. So any little bit of water and condensation will hopefully soak up in there. If it dries out too much, we're worried that no worms and stuff will actually help break these guys down. We're finally seeing a little bit of moisture here, maybe 2-3 inches below that top line. So that's a good sign that maybe this stuff will start breaking down. Warmer weather will probably help with that too. 2 of these buckets are pretty dense and heavy, which means they probably got a nice wet manure in them. One of them is all airy like the other 2 we got before. So I don't know what to do other than watering them or changing what we mix with them. You know, we're using aspen bedding with guinea pig poop and pee in it, and adding leaves and sometimes little sticks or like half or rotted tree trunk pieces. If we're going to be able to get 2 or 3 buckets at a time, you know, like steadily, then maybe we need to do like half of the wood chips, you know, so 1 thing of wood chips to 2 buckets and see if that actually helps, or maybe even all 3. I doubt my cement mixture will hold all 3 of these plus wood chips and stuff. We may have to do it in phases or layers. But I'm hoping that our, you know, warm weather will help get those worms out of our compost and get into our you know, magic soil and stuff, so I can pull some more worms out and like add to it after it's mixed. So I did not know where to end this video, but we got another shipment coming in a few days, so I really don't want to wait until Friday, Saturday, Sunday, you know, and keep videoing every day or two and just making this guy really longer and longer and longer. I think that we're getting to somewhere around 40 degrees tonight Fahrenheit, and it's going to be in like the low 50s for the rest of the week, I believe. So no more 30s, no more 20s, hopefully no more 20s at all, you know, until the winter's in, but who really knows. So the other day I went around and grabbed some more of those rubber strips, grafting strips, and put around some of the plants that we grafted previously and didn't put them on, just to, you know, like a pecan and a few other things, just to have that tighter grip, especially knowing this cold weather could potentially, you know, make these grafts fail. So we're going to try to give them their best chance of taking. I've also just farted around and did a couple random chestnut on oak grafts, one in a little pot and one in the ground. And, you know, the oak trees here are pretty much evergreen, so, and the chestnuts obviously are dormant, so they have no leaves on them. They're sleeping basically. So you shouldn't have to wait to graft on them like you would if you were going potentially chestnut on chestnut, and I would still graft chestnut on chestnut even if the rootstock isn't awake yet. But you may have better successes, you know, in a month or 2 from now. Definitely, and a few times over the last month or so said, you know, what's next? What's limited? You know, it's a limited selection on what could potentially come next with our projects, our experimentation, or however we want to move forward here. And, you know, one of the big things is we do have a lot of mulberry cultivars. Even if none takes, you know, I'm sure a lot of them or a few of them will take. Even if we have no new takes this season, we still got a bunch of them we haven't really tried. However, there are definitely a few more. Oss turkey is one of them, and probably a couple more mulberries that I definitely want to try, whether it's in a container or somewhere just where a tree is growing in the ground and we have a place for, you know, 3, 5, 7, 10 grafts just to experiment with. But for the most part, mulberries, we have enough. Definitely have enough. Too many probably. And I think, well, maybe I'm almost done. I definitely have to consider that we can also do container gardening, container fruit trees, shrubs, whatever. And I definitely have some ideas, especially with propagation, grafting, and all that good stuff. So we definitely can move forward in a few other different directions. We don't have to just slow down to a snail's pace and wait for something to die to make room for something else.